Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Punt Intended podcast, a Dynasty fantasy basketball podcast and a Sport Ethos production presented by FanDuel. As always, I am your host, Mark C., the Dynasty leader over at Sports Ethos. On today's episode, we're going to walk through a recent 12-team, 18-round Dynasty mock draft that we hosted over at Sports Ethos and walk through my selections, walk through my process with each of the picks. Did I opt for more of a win now approach? Did I look more to the future, build that youth and prospect base? Did I do a blend? Stay tuned and we'll walk through all those items here in just a few minutes. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into things. You can find me over at Blue Sky at Mark C Sports Ethos and on Twitter at MacAttack145. My Dynasty writings and rankings can be found at sportsethos.com with an NBA Fantasy Pass subscription. Some of my recent content, I recently released my 2025 Dynasty offseason, my 2025 offseason Dynasty buys and sells. I believe went through 5 buys and 6 sells, so up the numbers a little bit from last year. Few weeks ago, we reviewed those 2024 buy sells, went through some of the wins, went through some of the losses and lessons learned, applied that to this year. The freebie in that one is Anthony Simons as a buy. If you want to find out why I think he's a buy, even though it seems like the Blazers didn't get much for him, even if it seems like the Celtics are moving on from him, go and check out that article. Again, that is the 2025 offseason Dynasty buys and sells. You can find that over on sportsethos.com and get access to all of my buys and sells with that NBA Fantasy Pass subscription. Okay, let's get into this mock draft now. Again, just to reiterate the settings, this was a 12-team, 18-round Dynasty mock draft with starting 3 guards, 3 forwards, 1 center, and 3 flex. So you got 10 starters, a pretty good amount of flexibility with your lineup there. You also get 2 injured reserve slots and 2 minor spots. So enough spots to stash some players, whether they're injured long-term, whether they are young and still developing and you know you're not going to start them. So really you're rostering between at minimum 216 players to roughly, say it's about 250 plus. Normally, if this were a real league, I would extend the bench even further. But just for purposes of time and making sure we got a full draft selection, 216 picks I think is more than adequate to show that and really show where these values are differentiating between different dynasty managers. My strategy entering this mock draft, as it is with any dynasty league, is just let the value fall to me. I am never a manager who goes into a draft and says, I am going with youth right away, or I'm going pure win now. I have no clue ending the draft how other managers are going to approach it. Maybe other managers take youth way earlier than I think they should go, which means all the veterans and win now talent become great values, or vice versa. Everyone wants to win now. Everyone takes those productive players today, and then the youth become great values. When I approach any dynasty draft, I let the value fall to me in the early rounds, and then I evaluate how my team is shaping up, and then I'll adjust my strategy from there. You'll somewhat see that in this draft, and you'll see how I tackled balancing what value picks fell to me, and then how I started building around that. I'm not saying not consider build or age within your picks, but for me in the early rounds, that is more of a tiebreaker or differentiator. It is not the sole deciding factor. Really, the raw talent level and value is the deciding factor. And then if I need to adjust positions or timeline or other factors later on, I will do that through trades. I have no worries about that. Really, in your dynasty startup draft, that is a time when you can really extract the most value. Of course, maybe you make the perfect trade. Maybe you make the perfect rookie draft selection later on. But otherwise, this is your chance to maximize your team's talent value. And that's why I hold that paramount in my dynasty startup drafts. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll walk through all my draft selections. There we go. So again, we are on YouTube. I am sharing my screen. So behoove you to watch on YouTube. If you're watching, go ahead, hit that like button. Takes 2 seconds, tap the screen, hit the thumbs up, done. Easy enough, would mean a lot to me and the efforts to grow this podcast. And if you're on audio, I will do my best to read through the picks, read through what round and what overall pick they were, just so you all get that information. As you can see here, we have plenty of Dynasty experts and analysts from the industry in this mock draft. We have Dynasty Hoops HQ, DBC Jason. We got the 3 people from Angle Fantasy Basketball with Mitchell, Braxton, and Andrew. We got Kayla. We got 2 people from Dizzle Dynasty. And then we got some of the sports ethos experts as well with Rick Kamla. We have Dr. A, Steve Alexander, and Aaron Brew, who got the first overall pick. So lucky for him, he got Wembanyama. But we'll skip ahead to my pick. In future episodes, we will bring on other people to discuss their drafts and how they felt this Dynasty draft went on. But on this one, just want to focus on my selections here. So as you can see, I was pick 7 here, and I opted for Anthony Edwards there. Edwards, obviously, he gives you that great base of points. His threes really skyrocketed last season, and maybe he doesn't shoot that well on pull-up threes going forward, but it's clear the volume is there in this game, and it's a great base for points and threes, setting myself up for the rest of this draft. Now, I don't love that Anthony Edwards doesn't necessarily have that other impact category in this game as his assist. I'm not going to say topped off, but they maybe have leveled off at that 6.5 range, which isn't bad, but it's not elite like a Cade Cunningham or Luka Doncic. It's not going to power you to league leaders in that category. But still, I mean, Anthony Edwards is obviously amazing. He's only 24, still got a lot of prime seasons left of him. He's going to get also that free throw percentage base, and it's a really solid point to go forward. Again, there might be players who are easier to build around, such as Giannis Antetokounmpo, if you are building a specific build. But in terms of breadth, reliability, and knowing what you're getting, and with that age, Anthony Edwards is a pretty rock-solid selection in this range. Also nice, you do get that guard-forward eligibility with Anthony Edwards. And this allows a little bit extra flexibility going forward. In round 2, went with Tyrese Maxey. So that was round 2, pick 18 overall. Full disclosure, I missed that LaMelo Ball was still on the board. And if I had seen that, I would have gone LaMelo Ball. And that's a lesson in any Dynasty draft. Just make sure you are double checking to make sure players aren't there that you would rather have. I make that mistake so often in mock drafts. And I've made that mistake in Dynasty drafts too. So yes, even experts can mess that up and miss on players. But still perfectly happy to get Tyrese Maxey here at 18th overall. Really, I don't want to say securing points and threes because this is only 2 rounds of this draft. But this is as secure as points and threes as you're going to get early on in a Dynasty startup draft. And yeah, I mean, we saw Maxey maybe struggle a little bit with Embiid off the court, but I mean, he still had a great season overall. He still put up that volume, still gave you great points, great threes, not horrible efficiency. I'm not going to call it good, but it certainly isn't too damning. And I'm not really too worried about his role or future or anything like that because it's clear that he can play off ball and he can still get plenty of production on ball, even if there aren't other stars to draw attention away. His assists are also not otherworldly, but again, fine, like Anthony Edwards' assists in that 6.5 range, in the range where it's definitely going to add on and stack on there a little bit. So early on, you kind of see not particularly building to anything specific, taking the value that falls to me, but you can see this base of this guard heavy stats coming through. So pretty happy with Tyrese Maxey there. I would have been happier with LaMelo Ball, but again, Tyrese Maxey, plenty fine there. In round 3, this is where we go center with Domantas Sabonis at pick 31 overall. I like locking in my center spot fairly early. Don't like waiting too long on it. And I think Sabonis here helps shore up some of the stats that I'm weak in while still accentuating some of my strengths and some of my ancillary stats. With Sabonis starting to get up there in age, I am slightly worried that a center fall off cliff could be coming, and we just use his stats across the board start declining somewhat rapidly. But at the same time, he's still been massive for the past couple seasons in fantasy with those counting stats. With that contract, that massive contract, I think he has no, even if he does fall off, he's going to have to play just because that contract is so albatrossy. I don't want to say albatrossy yet, but it's a massive contract, right? And we saw Nikola Vucevic that even when he started to decline, he still saw plenty of minutes because that contract was just so big. It didn't really mean anyone else could be brought in. So long story short, I am slightly concerned that Sabonis' skills and production fall off some, but I think the role is still going to be there where you can trust him enough in the next, 3 to 4 years time to put up this great production. Stats wise, obviously a huge boards boost here, something I kind of lacked with my first 2 selections. And he still does provide those assists. Those 6 assists a game just keep stacking on. So while I maybe didn't get any elite assist guys with Anthony Edwards and Tyrese Maxey with my first 2 picks, I have very solid assist players across the board. Get that field goal percentage help. His free throw percentage isn't really that bad at 75%, so still keeping a nice advantage there. Still getting some points from that center spot. I think this is just a good selection to beef up and allow myself further flexibility going forward. Whether it's I want to still hammer those points in threes or maybe a big man falls and I can shore up those boards a little more. With Sabonis, though, and with my previous 2 selections, blocks are definitely not going to be in play for this team. Let's move down to round 4 now. Round 4, pick 42 overall, I went with Jamal Murray. Maybe somewhat of a theme forming for my team, I guess. We are very much stacking combo guards, and it will become even more evident as we go through the rounds. But Jamal Murray, we're just filling up those guard stats here. Again, stacking on points and threes. Again, this is still a pretty, I wouldn't say uber efficient scorer, but fairly efficient given his volume. So we're not completely torpedoing that base there. And I feel like rather sneakily, for all of talk of Murray's slow starts and games missed and all those aspects around him, he's averaged at least 6 assists the past 3 seasons. Which, again, we're stacking assists here. Not massive guys, but just a steady income of assists throughout these first 4 picks. And in terms of his games played, Murray has played 65, 59, and 67 games the last 3 seasons. So I think the talk of the injury risks and the talk of him not being as productive early on is a little overblown. When you look at the full sample, really, I think just a productive player, happy to get him at 42 and just add him to the squad and add to those strengths there. If you're looking at my squad, again, mentioned we're getting a lot of those guard stats, a lot of those combo guard stats, which of course is why in round 5 at pick 55 overall, I went with Austin Reeves. We are definitely not shoring up the board stats with him. Again, this was another value selection where at 55, I felt like Austin Reeves was the best on the board. And we're basically pounding this combo guard and efficient scoring archetype here. What helps with Austin Reeves, he is forward eligible, which is just nice for my squad. Allows me to play him in the forward spot. I already had Jamal Murray and Tyrese Maxey as guard only players. Reeves can just slot either in guard or forward, depending on how I want to do my lineups. And this basically adds again to, okay, he's not fantastic in boards. He's not completely bereft. Still stacking on assists, stacking on good free throw percentages, stacking on good percentages from the field, and adding some more points in threes to really make those key strengths of my squad. And sure, I mean, Luka Doncic and LeBron James are there, but we saw Reeves actually excel when they were there because of that relieved pressure on him, and he excelled in that third creator role. And let's say he leaves next offseason in the 2026 offseason for a different team, or LeBron James leaves the Lakers. I mean, I think that's fine for him too. We've seen Reeves be fine as a second primary creator option. So I think this is just the right range for Reeves. I'm happy to snag him up there. Round 6, pick 66 overall, went with, you may have guessed it, another combo guard and Zach LaVine here. Now, sure, I'm probably going too heavy on these points and threes and efficient scoring mold, but I'm okay with that just because, again, it's the value that comes to me, and that's how I approach these early rounds. I thought LaVine was the value on my board. He was actually the last player in the tier for me, so I'm just going to snag him up. I was not going to go down tiers to pick a different player. I want to get the best value. I don't want to compromise my philosophy of getting value in the building and figuring it out later. So I add Zach LaVine to the team, and I mean, clearly we're going to be fine in points, great in threes, pretty good from the line. That's kind of the squad we're building here. We're basically building combo guard university here. And yes, LaVine's stats did drop a little bit on the Kings, but who knows what happens with DeMar DeRozan. Or maybe Zach LaVine gets moved again. And I think we know what to expect from LaVine. Yes, he had a fantastic shooting season last season, which we kind of detailed on that buy sells review 2 weeks ago. But I still think he's going to do well. He's positioned, I think, to do pretty well on that team still. And just a solid pick accentuating my strengths. And again, combo guard sometimes gets those forward eligibility, so I can play him in my forward spot as well. So again, adding players with positional flexibility, just a little bit of an added plus there. So right now, my team build has been more, I would say, get more prime players win now. Yes, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Maxey are still a bit on the younger side, but some Domantas Sabonis, Jamal Murray, Austin Reeves, Zach LaVine, gearing more towards that win side. Doesn't mean I'm going to devalue youth, as we'll see in the next couple of picks here as we get into the middle rounds, but we're trying to make sure our starter base is solid and can contend this season. With that in mind, we have great points, threes, free throw percentage, pretty good on assist actually. Even though we have no standouts, pretty much everyone averages at least 5.5 assists a game. But boards and some of those big man stats is where we're lacking. I know blocks is a lost cause at this point, but boards I think can be salvaged, which is why in round 7 at pick 79, I went with Isaiah Hartenstein. I think we saw Hartenstein excel on the Thunder, and a good role for him. Was able to play both with Chet Holmgren, without Chet Holmgren, saw plenty of minutes, not too many concerns about that going forward. Even if the Thunder do work in Thomas Sorber some, I think Hartenstein is going to see plenty of run on this team. We saw what a good fit his passing was too. And I like snagging him at 79, snagging that second center, helping beef up my board some, still kind of adding that assist some. Mentioned early on, I don't have any outstanding assist player, but literally every one of my players benefits me an assist. So I still feel competitive in that category. Yeah, I'm not getting as many points or threes from Hardenstein here, but I don't need them with how many players are already drafted that have points and threes. So, like getting Isaiah Hardenstein here, and maybe if I don't know what's going to happen in the 2026 offseason. I don't think the Thunder will at least retain him at that team option number, but do they trade him away? Does he get signed elsewhere, signed at a lower number? I think any of those options, there could even be a little bit more upside if he is just the full blown full time center in a different locale. So Isaiah Hardenstein, pick 79 in round 7. Happy to add him to my squad here. Next, got round 8. At pick 90, I went with Nikola Topic. Yes, Nikola Topic. We are going against the grain now, going for our first true prospect here. Nikola Topic, someone who I loved in the 2024 draft, still love him as a profile for fantasy with that downhill driving, with that, I would say, pretty elite vision, good passing with both hands. We saw some of those flashes at Summer League. And we saw the ability to also get some steals too, be willing to shoot the three. And I really like that profile as a potential lead guard player in the NBA. Will he get that chance this season? I mean, I think he'll be battling AJ Mitchell for that role in the backup minutes. And I think the Thunder do need someone of his profile on that team once you get past Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And maybe even just playing alongside Jalen Williams to beef up some of that creation aspect. But regardless of its situation, Topic is really a player that I rate. I have him higher than 90, but there were a lot of prospects that were still on the board here. I felt like I could get him later, and I was willing to be patient a little bit. I actually debated drafting Topic in round 7, but I felt I wanted that center value then. And then I felt Topic would still be there in round 8 here. Turned out to be the case. Adding to that, and yes, he's not win now, but I secure, in my mind, an elite prospect. And once you start getting to, I would say, like the 90s or the hundreds of your dynasty startup, the production does start flattening out a bit, where maybe there's some older veterans in these ranges. But then you get to some of these guys, like Josh Hart, Andrew Nemhard, Podziemski, Jabari Smith, Malik Monk, Tumani Kamara, Aiden, Keegan Murray, where, these guys, I mean, yes, some are better in production than others, but I think you can still get similar production around later, but secure your elite prospect now. So I was more than happy to secure, in my mind, an elite prospect in Nikola Topic, add to my squad. Maybe he's stashed, but I already have 7 very solid starters in my mind. And I felt really good about adding a strong prospect to my youth base and injecting that profile into my squad. Round 9, this is where we go back to this win now approach at pick 103, going with Jimmy Butler. I mean, I think his role is obviously really secure with the contract in Golden State. We see him just produce across the board extremely well, except in threes, which, again, with my squad that I built, is perfectly fine. He's going to help keep that free throw percentage good, keep the efficiency from the field strong. Again, another player who isn't great in assist, but is just very steady in that regard. Add some boards as well, beefing up my forward base, adding some points. I think just a productive veteran to add to my team now, push forward the very solid starters and win now approach my team more has. And I felt it's good value here. Felt that I've said this, we talked about this with Zach from Digital Dynasty last week. Productive players still bring a lot to the table. And if Jimmy Butler gives, 2 top 40 seasons here at pick 103, I will be perfectly happy with that. Getting that sort of high impact production this late in the draft, I think, is just really good work. Next, we'll go to round 10 here. Pick 114 overall. I go back to the youth well and select Jeremiah Fierce. Another prospect I love, and I know it's going to take some time with him, But again, with the production flattening here, I felt there were still plenty of veteran picks that I liked, plenty of players that I could select to add stats to my team. And I wanted to get, in my mind, Fears, who is could potentially be an elite player. Not, I don't want to, elite's probably too strong, but a very strong fantasy player with, again, heavy usage, great points and threes and assists potentially. You don't get a chance to add that sort of talent to your room all too often if he hits. I'm a believer in Jeremiah Fears, and I was happy to take him here. You could argue I have plenty of guard talent, but I'm fine getting who I think is the best talent. And if Fears hits, I'm not going to be concerned about, oh no, I didn't not getting Kyle Filipowski and not showing up my big stats. I'm going to think I got Jeremiah Fears at 114, where he ends up, and then others value him so much higher than that. Then I will trade him away for a big prospect if I need those stats. I'd rather get the players that I think have the best chances to increase their value or the best chances for that production at that slot. Jeremiah Fears is that former there. I think he has a great chance of outperforming this draft slot, adding a lot of value and adding, again, that younger profile to my team. And in my head, I have two really promising guard prospects with Topic, with Fears. Maybe I use them as trade chips later on, or maybe I just keep them and let them develop and see what they become. But it gives me that optionality and flexibility. And even if you are taking this win now approach, as I am, I think it is still important to make sure you get some profile of youth, even if it's a little bit, just whether it's for trading or whether it's for having some replacement talent down the pipeline. Moving now to round 11, pick 127 overall, we go with Cameron Johnson. Cameron Johnson, yes, he had a, I don't want to say breakout, but really stellar production year with the Brooklyn Nets, partially filled by who else did they have on the team. But I think he's actually due for just as big, if not a better fantasy season with the Denver Nuggets, playing off Nikola Jokic, being able to show more element of that drive game, attacking closeouts with the extra spacing afforded to him. I'm really big on Cam Johnson for this season and for a few more seasons as he's, entering his second half of his prime seasons here. I'm really happy to get him at 127. Yes, maybe I'm indexing too hard on threes at this points, but Cam Johnson, okay rebounder, maybe can add a little other stats here and there. But as a player, I think is going to give you easily top 100 production for a few more seasons, and getting him at 127 is, again, strong value in my eyes here. I feel like with any Dynasty mock, I feel like most managers feel like they do get value because you'll get your guy, and your guy is going to be higher ranked comparatively to the board. And I'm sure everyone here probably feels great about their draft, honestly. So if I feel like I've been echoing, oh, I love the value here, love this pick here, love adding this player to my squad, it's usually the case. But I think you'll normally find you can find players that you like at each draft slot. And it's more about balancing when do you get those high impact prospects versus when do you want to add that certain production level. I mean, we talked about production falling off in this range, or not falling off rather, but staying steady. You look at where I picked Nikola Topic, and there were players like Josh Hart, Devin Vassell, Andrew Nemhard, Keegan Murray going around those picks after Topic. I think on a production value, Cam Johnson is going to be equal or better than them over the next 2 to 3 seasons. And so you can see, I went with Topic here instead of maybe getting one of those productive players now. But I was still able to grab a productive player. This grabbed Topic in round 8. I grabbed Cam Johnson in round 11. So I still grabbed what in my head, a greatly productive veteran now, while also getting a high impact rookie earlier on. So no one knows talent cliffs or production cliffs start to level off some. And that's when you can maybe switch up, inject some youth, or know when to target. In your dynasty drafts, know when those production cliffs start leveling out, and when those rookie or prospect cliffs start dropping off, and when managers are going to start targeting those rookies. If you see here in round 10, look how many young guys were taken. Derek Queen, Jaden Ivey, Trey Johnson, Jeremiah Fears, Kyle Filipowski, Rob Dillingham, Jaeger Demon, Thomas Sorber. A lot of managers started getting all that youth there. Arguably, I started that. This was round 10. I started that in round 8 personally by getting Nikola Topic and then also making sure I got Jeremiah Fears here. So I was already starting to build that rookie base earlier on. And then I continue that theme going into round 12 at pick 138, grabbing Kasparas Jakushonis, a player who I have talked about a lot. I typed up a lot. Not scared of the landing spot in Miami. Not scared that he dropped the 20th in the draft. He's another one of these players who I rate as a potential lead guard in time. And getting those volume of assists and points and threes and usage is really, I think, one of the keys to fantasy production. And so I'm happy to take a chance here at 138 to get Kasparas Jakushonis, add him to my squad, and continuing to add to my prospect base. Again, I think there's still plenty of productive talent on the board. And you can see still Vucevic, Paul George, DeMar DeRozan going in these ranges. And there's still more veteran talent to add to the board to fill out the rest of my starter base. We're going to start entering the last 6 rounds here of this draft. And I believe it's 6. I had 6 starters going into round 7. I added Hardenstein for 7, added Butler for 8. So I have 8 starters. I need really 2 to 3 more productive starters, and I'll feel pretty good about my starting lineup and the rest of the players that I kind of want to be youth and future value. Let's go to round 13, pick 151, where I start to then flesh out the rest of my starting lineup and my startable players with adding PJ Washington to my squad. I made this pick before the recent extension news came down, which means he can't be traded from the Mavericks. It's probably a little bad for short term given the amount of forwards and bigs there, but Washington, I think, is still going to get plenty of run and opportunity there. He helps my boards slightly. He actually averaged about 7.5 boards last season. So it's a nice little boost there. And just kind of chips in across the board otherwise. Not going to help my field goal percentage that much. Probably going to bring that down some. But I'm okay with that. I think his value is a little deflated right now, but I think he's going to have plenty of just solidly productive seasons around in the near future and the midterm. And is this a sexy pick? It's no. PJ Washington is the definition of a very unsexy pick, but it's one that I think will just add quality to my starting lineup and quality production and get a player I was happy to get at 151. Next, round 14, pick 162, went with Aaron Nesmith, another player in that kind of born veteran mold here, but I appreciate Naismith. I mean, we saw what he can do in the playoffs too, which I'm not saying playoff production is indicative of future performance, but I think once Naismith got over that ankle sprain that held him out for that first half of the season last year, he was just a solidly productive player. And I mean, these stats aren't going to be, they don't stand out, right? Okay, I mean, where's points here? 12 points a game, 4 boards. I mean, not many steals, 2 threes. I mean, nothing standing out there, but just a good depth option. I like Naismith in that role, a player I can plug in, and maybe he gets some extra usage this season and breaks out a little bit more. I like getting him at this range. I didn't see any prospects I necessarily loved. So, again, just decided to add a quality player here. And I do the same thing in round 15 at pick 175 with Andrew Wiggins. He's starting to enter post-prime at this point, but I think his role is fine on the Heat. He's going to do what he does. And I don't really have too much more to add to this pick. I think we know who Andrew Wiggins is at this point, but I just wanted another, really one of my last veteran options in my starting rotation. Just puts my squad at 11 players who I feel comfortable starting on a weekly basis, and then just adds to that idea of productive player value. And I also felt that the prospect that I would have taken at this point was going to be available in the next round. So I felt, let's take the veteran now. Let's gamble that that prospect I like is going to be there in the next round. So went with Andrew Wiggins, and then my plan worked out. At round 16, pick 186, being able to acquire Nolan Traore for my squad. There's probably a theme with my prospects here, and I picked up on it when I was doing my rookie rankings. But I do love guards who have the potential to be lead on-ball creators. And not just guards, but rookies or prospects in general who can maybe profile as on-ball creators and engines. Yes, Troy's shooting percentages were a little ugly in his French league debut, not debut, but debut season. But we saw the glimpses and the flashes and the speed that he plays at. And I think his passing is actually really solid as well. So being able to add that player, yes, it's another guard prospect. Maybe I have a type. You can comment on that if you think I have a type when evaluating prospects. But I felt good about adding Nolan Traore here and being able to stash him and see how he does. Or heck, maybe I get some silly season production out of him in the later half of the season. And on Brooklyn, they're going to play their rookie guards. They gave Cam Thomas, well, not gave, they didn't offer Cam Thomas too much an extension. That's why he opted to take the qualifying offer. Clearly, it doesn't seem like the Nets are all too invested in Cam Thomas's future. And Nolan Traore should have opportunity, along with all the other rookies there, to show something. Will it be good? I don't know. Probably not. But will it be productive? Potentially. And there also is the opportunity here that Nolan Traore sees enough minutes and enough production that then I could trade him later on too. To be clear, I did not draft Nolan Traore with the intention to trade him here. I did not intend to kind of do a pump and dump here with him. But if that happens and his value goes really high, I'm not going to shy away from trading him if I need to make that trade for win now or for championship reasons. So just a little bit of a small factor in my head that here's a prospect that could take time to develop, may take a lot of time, but at the same time, he has a chance to be very productive today, which is something you can't always say for a highly developmental prospect. Round 17, second to last round here, I pick 199. I go for Bobby Portis. And maybe this seems like I'm adding too much productive talent to my team, but as I mentioned, I have drafted a ton of guards and forwards and not a lot of centers to my team. And this is actually only the third center I added to my team. Boards are probably going to be an issue and probably a category I need to at least be able to fight in. And Portis should be able to do that and help me on those weeks where I think I need extra boards. And really, once I looked past Portis, I did not love the center options, really. There are some that were more speculative. You can see Wendell Carter and Daron Sharp going later and Brook Lopez, but those are more backup centers. And Portis is technically a backup center, but he plays still, 25 minutes a game pretty reliably, should get me enough boards that I'm happy with, and then not really tank my other stats and just kind of aid there as well with some of that breadth. And I really did need another center at this point, and I was happy to get Bobby Portis instead of maybe a more development option or an option I don't feel secure about. Bobby Portis is a solid veteran to add to this team and add to that center rotation. And there we go. Last pick here, round 18, pick 210. I go for Jace Richardson. Yes, this is another guard prospect. This is one where, this is the end of the draft. Minor stash, this is probably a player I'd stash in my minors most of the season. Or if I see a player emerge on the waiver wire, I'm fine dropping Chase Richardson for him. If he shows something early, great. If he doesn't, or it looks like the playtime is going to be too unsteady for me to see what he can be, fine dropping him and moving on. So I kind of like that balance here in a way, balance where there is some upside here, but I'm also not going to feel too beholden to keep him if he doesn't show anything. And that's kind of the player just rounding out the draft. Got my productive talent. Let me just get someone in the building that maybe he shows something early on, and if he doesn't, I'm okay cutting, and we can move on from there. Let's look at the final squad and see what I built and see what I could have maybe done a little better or what I liked in my draft here. So kind of have my rough starters here. I mentioned Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Maxey. Actually, we'll just read out all the picks here. It's not going to be in draft order, but this will be kind of my productive starters. Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Maxey, Jamal Murray, Jimmy Butler, Zach LaVine, Austin Reeves, Domantas Sabonis, Isaiah Hartenstein, Cam Johnson, Andrew Wiggins. That's kind of my 10 starters. Then my other productive veterans got 3 off the bench here, and Aaron Nesmith, Bobby Portis, and PJ Washington. So I can mix and match those a little bit depending on the week, depending on the matchups, depending on the games played. Can work that in, and I feel like it's a good mix, right? I have 10 starting spots, and I have 13 players that I feel comfortable starting and giving me good value. Then you can see I still have, even though, yes, Edwards, Maxey 24, and then everyone else is, I would say, 28 plus in terms of my productive veteran talent. But I still have plenty, I think, of intriguing youth that can really add to my squad later. Nikola Topic mentioned, Jeremiah Fears, still have Kasper Yakujonis, Nolan Traore, and Jace Richardson. So I have 5 very intriguing prospects. Yes, they all happen to be guards, and I don't love that aspect. But again, if I can easily make trades if any of these players pop off, and I'm not worried about that at all. In terms of the stats balance, I mean, obviously points massive here. Plenty of guys who score at least 20 points here are going to be able to chip in very nicely. And I have plenty of players who are just monsters in threes too. Edwards, one of the league leaders there. Tyrese Maxey, great. Zach LaVine, Austin Reeves should be great. Cameron Johnson should be great in that category. Field goal percentage, great. I mean, look at how many players are not even just 80%, but 85% here. Keeping that efficiency pretty high. Hardenstein's a bonus. They're centers. But I have plenty of players who can offset that. Assist. Yes, I have no one that averages even 6.5 assists. But look how many players average at least 5 to 6 assists. It's 1, 2, 3. Well, not Anthony Edwards, I guess. You would hope he gets the 5 assists, but at least 5. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 players who average at least 5 assists a game, and then LaVine and Edwards will chip in there as well, along with Isaiah Hartenstein. So I love just the trickling of assists throughout the entire roster. So points, threes, free throw percentage, assist, I think do profile as good categories. Blocks are going to be non-existent. Turnovers probably aren't going to be too great with this team either, just with the amount of guards. So blocks, turnovers, we'll forget about those. But I want to be strong in at least one more category. Field goal percentage, I don't think I have enough anchors there. It's really just Sabonis and not anyone else. Butler is above average there, 50%. That should be good. And then I have a lot of just kind of okay players, but really a lot of below average players there. So field goal percentage would be iffy. Boards, Sabonis and Hardenstein are going to have to put in a lot of work here. Got a lot of middling boards players. Steals, I have some players there. Not anyone great, but it'd be more a toss-up on a week-to-week basis. So I think you can see where I'm probably indexing a little too hard on points and threes here, which I identified while drafting. But as I said, I think I could easily make some trades here to help, whether it's getting a center, whether it's just swapping out, saying, hey, you know what, I have Cameron Johnson here. Looks like you might need some more points and threes. Let's trade for a forward or a big who gives me more boards. I think we could easily find that trade and make that happen in season. So really, I'm pretty happy with this draft, happy with the prospects I was able to acquire on this team, and still have that balance there in my squad. Even though I say this is a clear win now team and a team looking to compete, I would say, some clear blue chip talent, right? And I love having that balance, or at least having, I would say at least two players that are blue chip, not extreme blue chip talent, but cyan blue, baby blue chip talent, and Topic and Fears, and then a little bit more lottery shots with Nolan Traore and Jace Richardson, and letting Kasper Zakashonis just sit there and prove me right a year later. This would be, I like the balance of this squad. And something else you can see here is that I did make sure to draft some minors eligible players that I can easily stash. So I have Traore, Zakashonis, or Jace Richardson would probably be in that mix for swapping in and out of my minors. And then that way I can utilize 2 extra reserve spots. So it's maximizing my bench early on. So now, as you can already see, I slotted Zakashonis and Traore in my minors. And then whenever the waivers were to open up in this league, I can easily add 2 more players, whether they be just rotational players, prospects, players I want to just basically cycle in and out to add more players to my squad. I give myself that optionality. And again, do not force this sort of optionality in your draft, but be aware of your settings. Be aware that in this league, I could stash players in my minors and then take advantage of extra bench spots. So maybe some managers are rostering just 18 players, the 10 starters plus 8 reserves. I could roster up to 20 here by utilizing my 2 extra minor league spots. And really, actually, I could even do a little bit more. I can move Jace Richardson to the IR. I can move Tyrese Maxey to the IR. And then suddenly I could actually add. Now I see here this status summary. Now I can actually have basically 2 more additional roster spots. Actually, I said the reserves wrong. There's actually 16 reserves, so apologies for that. But you get the idea, right? Utilize some of these spots, utilize some of these IR spots and minor spots just to make sure you can maximize your roster spots. And even if that player doesn't work out that you add, take a flyer, see what happens. Maybe injuries hit in the preseason. Maybe a player emerges. Maybe a trade happens that opens up an opportunity, and you were able to already stash that player in anticipation of that, or anticipation of just something happening. So you get basically free extra added value. So I would say definitely make sure you do that. Post-draft is just to look at your available slots and moves that you can do to free up more roster spots on your team. But that will do it for this episode of the Punt Intended podcast. That was my full squad. If you like what I did, or if you think I drafted too heavy on guards, think that I missed some opportunities, let me know in the comments below on YouTube. Make sure you hit that like button again. If you're listening on audio, please do subscribe and rate this podcast if you're so inclined. That really does help the growth of the podcast. In the upcoming weeks, we will have some of these managers who drafted in this league come on the podcast and discuss their teams and discuss what their thought process was for the Dynasty mock draft. So be on the lookout for that. And we'll see you next time on the Punt Intended podcast presented by FanDuel.